everybody. Welcome to.
And we are live. We're here. It's always a
We're
part
here.
of the live stream, Pat, where I don't quite know what to do as people are logging on.
Nice. It's like one of those, like, what do I do with my hands sort of deal. Like, you were so talkative right before we started, and all of a sudden you clammed up and you're like, I'm so nervous.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the live stream hits go and the heart rate goes up to 135 beats per minute. This is kind of how this thing works a little bit. How about for you?
Well, there are things that make my heart rate go high, and this is not one of them because we've spent so much time in here. But did I tell you about my experience with watching kids soccer and my heart rate?
No, I do not believe you did.
It essentially, like, I was watching my kid's soccer game and my watch gave me warning signs being like, hey, abnormally high heart rate. I had no idea that I was like that involved, but I'm sitting there pinned at like 150, like watching my kid's game. And I'm like, this is not okay. Why am I so involved? But anyway, I've
done the same thing for my daughter singing the national anthem at events. Like my heart rate goes up like 135 just by watching her do that stuff.
I mean, I don't think my heart rate goes up that high when I work out. I don't think I like midway through Fran, I don't think my heart rate is 155. Like I have a resting heart rate of like 52 beats a minute on average.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But hey, speaking of elevating the heart rate,
we're
going to talk about general and specific warm-up today. Right?
Oh, yes, we are.
And that's one of the major goals we'll talk about, I'm sure. You know, one of the goals of a warm-up is getting the heart rate elevated, increasing core temperature, that sort of a thing. But before we get going with talking about the warm-ups, if you are joining us live, feel free to drop a message in the chat if you'd like. You're also welcome to ask any questions you want to throughout the live stream. And then Pat and or myself will go ahead and tackle those questions here. But feel free to say hi, where you're coming in from. But Pat, let's talk about you really quick. I think most of the audience probably knows you, but you've been around essentially forever, right? Since 2005 or so, 2006, you started doing CrossFit stuff?
Yeah, 2004. 2004, I started doing CrossFit. 2005, 6 is kind of where I started spending some time at HQ and doing that kind of stuff. And then 2006, 7 is where I really dug in and started traveling and doing all the fun stuff for the company. But yeah, forever is a good descriptor of that.
Well, it seems like that. We got Joe joining us from Leavenworth, Kansas. Welcome, Joe.
Chris Perry Tedesco. Chris Perry T. What up?
Yes, you've been around for a while, for sure. I'm always like, hey, I was thinking about this today. Like, how long have you been doing this stuff? And we can say things like, I've been doing this for about 20 years right now. We have reached that point in our life where we can say things like that.
Well, yeah, I think it's one of the interesting things I find with all that is that so many people hop from thing to thing just in life, and we all do to some degree. But when you stay with one thing for long enough, you have like, you just have that much more depth of understanding of it. And because like you don't deviate, it's not that you don't question it. It's just that you're just staying in the same thing. So you learn so much different stuff. So it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Feel free to ask any questions if you got them. But yeah, so beyond that, you've been around the block for about 20 years or so. You're a flow master for CrossFit, the seminar courses. You've coached a ton. You've had online training platforms. You've kind of done it all in the space. And I think like we're going to be able to have a good conversation about what the goal is of general warm-ups, what the goal is of specific warm-ups. Talk about some common pitfalls that we see. Sound good to you?
I mean, I think my main goal is to just try to disagree with you as much as possible and see if we can come to the reverse of a conclusion, basically showing as many arguments as possible.
Yeah, for sure. As always. We got a comment here from John Walker. Pat was one of my level 1 coaches at the ranch. Total professional.
Directly after I heckle you about disagreeing randomly. Awesome. Yes, thank you, John. Good to see you.
Well, we got Reggie here from Trinidad and Tobago. Awesome. Nice. Thanks for joining. For sure. And again, guys, feel free to ask questions about this stuff at any point in time. But we want to tackle this topic because this is actually a question that I think you and I both get at the level 1 and level 2 courses with like some newer coaches. Particularly, it's like, hey, like, what do I do? Like, how do I get started with the session? Like, what are the movements I should program for a general warm up? What is the purpose behind a specific warm up? Okay, so we get those questions. So let's talk about how we can effectively utilize these sessions and maybe dispel some of the myths out there and talk about some pitfalls. And then, like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. Sound good, Pat?
Cool.
Cool.
Sounds great, Eric.
Yeah. So why do you think there's some confusion here with warm-ups?
I think well, it's actually interesting. I was thinking about it when you sent me the kind of stuff we were going to be talking about. And I think it's kind of a balance of when CrossFit first started, it was just a workout on a website, right? So the only thing you were ever given was the workout. There wasn't like a ton of guidance around warm-ups. It was just kind of a nonchalant, like, hey, get warm. That's a good idea. There are some old journal articles talking about them and unpacking them, but that was kind of you're left to your own devices. The magic was really found in that programming and what made it so different, and the variance and the intensity and all those pieces. And I remember when I was first starting coaching, you were never given warm-ups. Like all we were ever given was the workout, and you had to like sit there and be like, okay, well, what am I going to do to warm them up? The over the years, as CrossFit became more professional, more well-known across the country and the world, and then there became more and more affiliates, things started to crop up to basically people started offering ideas and concepts and warm-ups to their coaches. So session plans became a thing. And I think that was actually a real big jump in quality of coaching across the board,
Yeah,
because it gave
absolutely.
people the like what to do, and they just had to figure out how to do it. But I think within that process, we lost some of the understanding of what goes into a warm up, because people didn't have to do it anymore. They didn't have to struggle through it. They didn't have to realize what got some people warm and what what didn't, and what was effective and what was not, because it was just kind of given to them. So I think we're kind of in this state where people are doing good warm-ups often, but they don't quite know, especially if they're given them by a company, but they don't, or CAP, but they don't quite know why. And I think that that's where the questions come from.
Yeah, and I think, along with that, like there seems to be a lot of different approaches out there now to warm up. Is like person A has a warm up protocol that they follow or a template, and then person B has a different protocol or template that they follow. Then someone else has something different there too. So I think that actually leads to a piece of the confusion as well. It's like, well,
Absolutely.
this person says I should shove lacrosse balls in my body. This person says I don't need to do that. What do I do?
Yeah.
Question here from Joe. So what is the question here initially here? Warm-ups at
Question
our
is, so
gym.
what percentage of the warm-up should be general and what percentage should be specific?
Yep.
And not an elementary question. You never apologize for asking questions, Joe. If you're thinking it, like 1,000 other people are also thinking it. That's the first rule of questions.
Yep.
If to quickly answer this, for the most part, is it depends on what your actual workout is for the day. The general rule of thumb is that your skill specific warm up should be slightly longer than your general warm up, because the general warm up is there to elevate core body temperature and take you through a basic range of motion. And the skill specific warm up allows more time for teaching and getting learning and getting the actual movement patterns built out in the neurological components and the physiological components, so they're primed for the workout. And that would be the big difference.
Yeah. And I like what you said there about like the workout itself determines all the other elements. So if you're creating a timeline, and I think you're probably similar to this too with me, Pat, we'll block off some periods of time. Like I'll try to block off like the last 7 to 10 minutes of class for like a cool down post-workout stuff. And then I'll plot my workout time on before that. So if I'm going to plot 10 minutes at the end of my lesson plan, so I'm at the 50-minute mark of the class there. When I start that, preceding that, I'm going to log the warm-up time that's going to take. And then I'll start figuring out, well, how much I want specific, how much do I want general, determined by the workout itself with how long it's going to last and what's the skill and loading required. I think we'll touch base on this a bit more later on too.
Yeah, and what Eric just went through is what they call the napkin timeline, where you very quickly draw up back of the napkin a quick timeline for your class. You plot the cool down, plot the at the whiteboard brief, make those 3 to 5 minutes, the whiteboard brief, 7 to 10 minutes, and the cool down at the end. And then you quickly figure out your workout stimulus, plot that on there, then go skill specific warm up, plot that on there. And then in remainder time, you use the general warm up, which really helps kind of answer your question, Joe, is once you've got a skill specific warm up that correctly prepares you for the workout, then what you can do is just whatever time's left over, that's your general time to warm up with the generalized, get the blood flowing, which will change the movements that you end up doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about the goal of the general warm up here a little bit, but let's kind of go back to that a little bit. Like, just like, what's the goal? I think about general warm ups and I'm like, I want to increase the heart rate, get my joints moving throughout a full range of motion, and then maybe some activation stuff if I want to get kind of that geeky and granular. Is there anything that you would say beyond that as far as a general warm up goes from both an athlete standpoint and a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it with the goal is that full range of motion of the body to some degree, a slow progression into getting the heart rate and blood flowing as we move through the system. There are arguments to be made for basically allowing for some mobilization into finding better end ranges for certain people. I don't think that's a must, but depending on the practitioner you're talking to, they build those in there or don't. Hence what you're saying with some people doing myofascial release stuff or some activation pieces with bands where you're doing some resisting and then letting it stretch further, things like that. But the core components of it are getting that body temperature going and then getting that blood flow going. Now, what I would say, coaching perspective wise, a big thing that we really do want to do is make sure that we're setting the tone for the overall class and checking in with people. So that general warm up, you usually want to make it so you're not only using it for its mechanical purposes of getting people warm, but you're also doing it to warm up the emotional back and forth you have with your people. That's your time to set the tone, to talk to people, to let them know that you're there, to check in on their weekends, to see that like these little things that happen, because there's not a ton of in-depth progressions and coaching in a generalized warm-up. They're usually simpler movements that don't require as much vision. You're still coaching and you're still offering your feedback and you're still helping people, but it's a great time to set the tone for class and really, really come to people with a connection and seeing what they need for the day. If it's an early morning class, you might need to bring some fire. If it's a later in the evening class, you might need to pull some fire out, and be like, hey, chill.
Yeah. But I think what you mentioned there, and I don't want to gloss over this, is like you're either talking with them to start assessing how they're doing that day, or maybe you're reading even like their body language. If you're doing some air squats in the warm up and someone's grimacing, getting down to the bottom of the squat, it might be telling you something about that athlete's readiness on that day, right?
Totally.
So
Absolutely.
Constant observation.
Yeah. One thing too that I'd like to just kind of throw out there before I forget it, if you're a younger athlete, you feel like warm-ups are too long. As a coach, you'll be like, gosh, these are, let's just get into the workout stuff. Don't do that. Just as like a pitfall. I know this is a pitfall for down the road, but it was just on my mind. It's like, I remember when I was younger, I'd be like a couple leg swings and I was ready to go. The more we age, we just need more time. So that general warm-up does need to be a bit robust. Don't worry about making people tired. They're there to work out. If they get tired, it means they're doing more work. So if they complain about it, you say, guess what? You're doing more work. You're getting more fit. Congrats.
Yeah. And, I like to see that the people are getting sweaty. They're getting a little bit out of breath. And it's kind of a good sign for me that the warm-up's done its job. Honestly, that's one of the things I'll look for with that. They start like, they come in with layers and all of a sudden the layer starts coming off, that sort of a thing. I think we're getting ready now. We're ready to rock. Do you think that the movements need to have a specific carryover to the workout in the general warm-up?
They don't, but there is, I don't think they need a specific carryover per se. I think a similar range of motion might be appropriate. So like in a general warm-up, if there is back squats for the day, it might make sense to pass through the squatting range of motion, but that can be done through deep lunges. That can be done through Spider-Man stretches and all kinds of, even rowing, it can move just similar patterns. So like say it's a deadlift workout, you can throw rowing in there. So you don't need to move through exactly the same pattern or exactly the same movements, but ideally it's a little similar.
Yeah, it tends to be a bit more efficient that way with the rest of your class, huh?
Yes. And I think the simpler movements, you can do that with a little bit easier. So like if you've got, say, 4 movements in your main workout and 2 of them are a little bit more complex and 2 of them are a little bit simpler, it's a pretty good strategy to just figure out a way to build those simpler movements into your generalized warm-up So there can be a little modicum of teaching in there, but not an overblown crazy thing. It's just part of what they're doing. And then you can reference back to that come workout brief, be like, remember in the warm up, we did these or whatever it is, as you're kind of getting in there come workout time.
Yeah. So you gave us a couple ideas for a squatting function. Let's say you're doing back squats, you're going to do whatever, Cossack squats, Spider-Mans, or air squats even, maybe with varying foot placements too. How about for give us your top 3 for if the workout is overhead dominant?
Overhead dominant.
You got a lot of push pressing going on.
We got. I'm actually a big fan of starting with hanging
Me too.
when people are going overhead. I think it allows their body to unwind a bit, and it's a great kind of less invasive way than just throwing someone upside down. I think that doing some pushing in different planes, whether it be push-ups or knee push-ups, or even as aggressive as something like a kick up to a wall and a handstand hold. But I would build up to that through something like a hang on the bar, some mixed grip hangs, some pushing or some inchworms where you're walking your body out and you're having to stabilize your upper body with along with your core into some push-up work, and then almost working my way up to potentially walking up and doing a wall walk or a handstand hold against the wall.
Awesome. And then how about stuff that's hinge pattern dominant? So you got a bunch of deadlifts popping up. Any kind of go-tos for there, like a top 3?
Top 3. I mean, it's always easier to start with deadlifting between the feet. So doing stuff like kettlebell work, or picking up either single leg objects where we're, doing single leg kettlebell deadlifts with that little foot out the back where you kind of balance it out and you work people's stability as well as a little bit of the range. Bootstrapper stretches where you're grabbing your toes, passing through the squat, and then sending your hips up in the air and getting that tension from the hamstrings. Some good mornings that are just lighting up the posterior as well as focusing on the bracing and working that combo of not you can use the movement pattern of something like a good morning to stress people's low back position when they move to something like a deadlift. And you can start to get an eye on it as a coach of that person doesn't know where their spine is. They're doing good mornings and losing their midline. And you're like, well, let's probably not throw them right into load and things like that.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to tackle on this, what you mentioned here before answering this question, is I think a drill that coaches can do is, you can get a sheet out, write out squat based movements, and then write out your top 5 mobility drills for a squat based movement. Do the same thing for an overhead movement or a deadlifting movement or a clean. And then when you're developing warm-ups, just pick one movement from each list that's involved in the workout and then add in some cardio piece. And that could be a great way to structure your warm-up and keep it simple.
Yeah,
I think. Now let's get to the question. Do you change the intensity of the general warm-up based on the stimulus of the workout? So for Fran or Annie day, do you push the warm-up intensity more than you are doing a 5K? I'll answer this question first. I do. I ramp it up pretty gradually, maybe a bit longer warm-up too. And then, by the end of that general specific warm-up, people are going to be breathing pretty hard, going to be cranking pretty good. What do you, for those shorter workouts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you look at the difference between those two workouts, Fran, Annie are both sub 10-minute workouts, even in the sub 5 minutes. So you're looking at a shorter, more intense workout, whereas a 5K is going to be a 20-minute workout. So more of your session, 20-minute plus workouts, more of your sessions taken away from that. There needs to be quite a bit of ramp up to the 5K in terms of intensity and running. I think there's something to be said for no matter what workout, you should have something that gets you breathing pretty hard right before you end up doing the workout. So no matter what it is, we should have a good pre-workout that gets the energy systems primed and ready to actually be used. Even though that is, cumbersome to some people and they feel like they're getting too tired and they can't give everything for their workout. So when it comes to changing the intensity of the general warm-up, I would say for a Fran Annie day, there's going to be a lot more total session because they're such short workouts. So you're going to have to figure out ways of getting the blood flowing and then quickly moving into teaching other fun skills. So going from that general warm-up into other stuff because you don't have as much stuff. So you could either choose to elongate the general warm-up because you want to do that, or you could shorten it and then have a bunch of other really fun things to teach. Like on a Fran day, I did the Fran the other day. If on an Annie day, you got sit-ups and double unders, right? So the main thing we got to teach is a double under. Sit up is pretty like sit up. So you you could do a lot of rebounding drills and other skill pieces and like stuff that we wouldn't normally get to do, like the ones where you go from a seated to a jumping position, and like that kind of stuff can flush out a class and make it bigger. But that would generally find yourself in the skill specific rather than the general. So yeah, it changes, but the same general theme applies, I would say.
Cool. How do you structure your warm-ups? Do you have like a specific template that you follow? Usually I got one
No.
I use a lot that I kind of follow.
Show me, tell me, talk to me, Eric. Fit the goal.
I'm just a big fan of like routine, man. Like I could go, it's like, usually it's like, I'm going to do 2 or 3 rounds of like 3 or 4 movements, and it's going to gradually ramp up in intensity. Like the first round is going to be a little bit more chill, and then the second round is going to be a little bit more intensity. And those movements are going to change a little bit in that second round to be a bit more demanding. So if I'm doing air squats round 1, I might be doing like a jumping squat round 2 or something else like that. That's just how I usually roll with the flow. Maybe that's too boring, but I think I've seen you do a couple classes and you seem to do something a bit similar, where it's like, yeah, regardless, we're going to start off a little bit lower key, and then we're going to get gradually ramped up even in that general warm up.
For sure. I think I'm a big fan of things like the animal movement patterns across the gym. I think those are always so variable, or the like, we're going to do something one way and then jog back, like sort of deal. Hopping on a rower and playing games. Like I like a slower start where I can banter with the people and then talk to them, and then kind of eventually ramp up range of motion and overall speed and effort that they're using there. Big thing for me though, in the general warm-ups, is making sure that they flow. A lot of the times when coaches are writing them, when they're first new to writing general warm-ups, they'll write these pieces where all of a sudden they find themselves walking around the gym like a million times. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, like keep it all in the same spot. Like they shouldn't be like, you can walk around the gym, but it should be like, if you write a warm-up, a generalized warm-up where you're starting in one place and doing a bunch of different things, make sure you write that in a very smart pattern for your gym. Like hey, we're starting at the wall here, and then we're going to walk from the wall to the pull-up bar, and on the way from the pull-up bar to the rope, it's going to look like this, and there's stuff along the way. I think the worst thing is when people are sitting there staring at you during the generalized warm-up. So for me, when I'm writing a generalized warm-up, I'm looking for flow, and I don't want the flow of their movement to be broken up that much by either me talking or them going to grab gear or doing other stuff like that. It should just really, really flow to keep that going.
I actually have that written down as like a common pitfall.
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh,
wasting time, and I've been guilty of that too. It's just like, hey, let's get going. Like, if you're gonna do one thing for people on the warm up, get moving, right? Just get moving, get hot right away. Don't waste time there, wasting time essentially. Do you think it's necessary?
Don't waste time wasting
Don't waste time wasting time. We can put that on a t-shirt. Great. Here we go.
Hashtag CrossFit.
Yeah. Do you think the warm-up needs to vary on a daily basis? These are questions that I get a lot too. Do we need to constantly vary the warm-up all the time?
Do you have to? No. And there's plenty of gyms that straight up don't. There's a lot of gyms that the CrossFit warm-up was 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats, 3 rounds with a 200-meter run in between. Was that it?
It was like a pull, push, hinge, anterior core movement, and squat function with, I believe, like a Samson stretch, repeated 2 or 3 times.
I've met a number of gyms that literally just do that every single day. And actually, I know a variation of that is like, if you talk to Wes Pyatt, who runs Coast Range CrossFit, he's got like a miniature activation piece that his coaches or his athletes do every single time they come to the gym. Like they do it almost mindlessly because it starts the classes off. For him, that's actually less about the movement piece and more the psychology of, now I'm training my body that when I do this, I'm about to go hard afterwards. That's his argument for it. I have a PT clinic guy here in town who will write very similar movement prep stuff based off of the workout they have for the day. They'll do certain different like activations with band work and things like that that are very consistent. I personally was not like that. I didn't like doing the same thing every day, but that was my own compulsion as a coach. Like I didn't want to have them do the same warm up every time. I liked playing games and I liked varying stuff up. And so for me, I didn't like doing that, so I changed it every day. But there's plenty of people who do the same thing every day or close to it. And for, they should do it for a reason. They shouldn't just do it for the whim of it. They should be like, I think we should do it every day like this because of XYZ. Then it works great. So you can mix it up or you can keep it the same.
Yeah, and I think that's led to some confusion too, is that people, and I'm guilty of this too, a lot of us coaches think we have to change up the warm up all the time because our clients are going to get bored of it. And sometimes they do, right? Sometimes they might get bored. So you got to throw a wrinkle on there, just like we do with regular just programming. In general, we have our foundational things that we do, and then we throw a wrinkle in the plan here and there. But I've always appreciated just the simplicity. And I agree with what Wes talks about too, is letting your body know that, no, you're recognizing something here, something hard is getting ready to happen here in a little bit.
Sure. But I would always push on that and be like, you're not always going to have that recognition before you need to do that in life. So let's just go ahead and be constantly varied with our stuff.
All the time. I forget what my next question was here.
It's okay. It was profound.
Oh,
it was
it probably was. So other things with general warm-ups. So we talked about like what the goal is, what we're looking to achieve from a coaching standpoint and athlete standpoint. I think one thing we can touch on too is that if you want to, if time allows, it's also a time we can add in things we might not normally see in a class. So I get questions a lot about like, hey, what about like rotational stuff? What about like medicine ball drills, that sort of a thing? I think general warm-ups, if you want to integrate some like some lateral movement work in there, some rotational work in there, that's a great time to go ahead and do that too.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think you can also add that in skill specific stuff. There's a ton of ways to incorporate unique movements in those general warm-ups. But again, though, I think that sometimes a little bit more focus on those would be better off suited in a skill specific warm-up. That would be take a movement pattern and then be teaching a process in the actual, skill specific. Ooh, I like this guy who just showed up, CrossFit. Something tells me that it's going to be a good conversation from CrossFit.
That's awesome. We got a question here from Daniel. Do you or does CrossFit have a resource of suggested warm-up movements that lead to other more complex, intense workout movements?
Eric, is there a place that has a lot of warm-ups in sequence for workouts that you can find anywhere?
Well, we got the affiliate toolkit, which has access to caps. If you have access to the affiliate toolkit, you can check that stuff out. There's tons of warm-up stuff there. With that, we have the classic article. The CrossFit warm-up is great, in my opinion. That's just like a great resource to fine-tune those things. There was an article written in the Professional Coach a while back, which talked about how to create your own warm-ups. And it talks a little bit about what I mentioned earlier. So for example, how to look at a movement there and then pick out a few movements you think a few warm-up movements that go well with that exercise of the day with it. And you can throw in things if you want to throw in for a deadlift pattern, a swing, a good morning, some other move. You're welcome to do that.
Yeah, I would highly recommend if you can check the affiliate toolkit out and you can get access to CAP. What it'll give you access to is all of their session plans that have those warm-ups built in. And you can start to reverse engineer those to see how movement patterns build into each other. So any program that's offering both the workout and the warm-up and the skill work, it'll show these really cool like patterns, and you'll see this progression as it moves through. Sometimes it's a little bit more random than others, but for the most part, you can see how whoever programmed it kind of worked it forward or back. I wouldn't say that there is a specific resource that's just warm-ups. I don't know if that directly exists. But I think CAP is a pretty darn good resource for examining that a little bit closer.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question here from Joe. When building a warm-up, how many movements is too many? I try to keep it to 2 to 3. Where'd that question go? But don't know if that is the right methodology. Joe, I think you're on the right track. I think keeping it simple is always a great idea. So I might, and you kind of outline what I do a lot of, like I usually do like one kind of like cardio, quote unquote, base movement. So like biking, running, rowing, jumping rope, jumping jacks, mountain climbers, and then 2 or 3 other movements that go along with the movements of the day. And I usually do 2 rounds of that, and it usually gets the job done. But I think a simple approach like that is great.
Yeah, less is better than more. Almost always, especially on those general warm-ups. When we started getting skill specific, you can argue that there's room for unpacking stuff, but I think in a general warm-up, less is better than more. There is something to be said for, like I said, in the animal walks version, where we're doing these different walks across the floor. You can do, frogs, and then kangaroos, and then blah, blah, blah. And like, there's more total movements, but they're not in depth. You're just kind of moving people through them as they go.
Yep. And I like that approach too with the animal drills. Let's talk about some other pitfalls we see. I think some that I see, warm-ups that are too long and take away from the skill work. That's probably like a common one.
What? No, that didn't happen in my level 4 class. How dare you call me out like that, Eric O'Connor?
Yeah, I mean, I just watched you last week do something like that, potentially. Completely. No. I think too complicated warm-ups are kind of something in there, like it's just too complex and you have to spend a lot of time just explaining things. And that could be something that happens versus like a more simple approach, kind of like what Joe outlined. And, I think some of it's just getting overly fancy with the mobility drills. I think a lot of times that stuff's fun every once in a while, but like keeping it simple, concise and deliberate tends to be a bit better.
Yeah, I think when being overly fancy with mobility is something where it can kind of make it so people are not getting warm. They're not actually utilizing the mobility for what it's for, which is finding a little bit more end range in the moment for the given workout. I would almost consider those as venturing into the skill specific, because the only time you would want to do them is if you knew you had a movement pattern that would then allow you to give you more end range or mitigate some sort of pain that you have going into it. Whereas the general warm up would be more centered around that core body temperature stuff. So I would say, just like you said, the pitfall would be adding too much complexity, not enough actual warming up. Maybe the movements are just too slow, and there's no elevated heart rate. Things like that.
Cool. We got a question here on, let's see what we got there. Thoughts on having the same general warm up every day. Tackle this a little bit. I'm fine with a similar approach on a daily basis. I recently talked with Johnny Davies, and something that he does that I think is pretty cool is he'll use the same warm up for a month, or a variation of that warm up for a month. And it usually is based on some things that he's seen as maybe weaknesses in the gym. And he'll use that same warm up every day for the month. And he said, people, they get bored with it by the end, but as of now, we're going to stick with it. So that's one thing to do. Maybe stick with the same warm up for 2 weeks or a month if you like that approach, or not. You can vary it up a little bit on a daily basis.
We kind of hit that in our last thing. I think there are people who do it. My request would just be, if you're doing that, do it for a reason. If you're choosing to do the same thing every day, do it for a reason and make sure it's actually purposeful. Like what you say here, 5 a.m. Squat Club, use it as an opportunity to improve something in your community. So if you're like, hey, I really want to work the shoulder capacity of my people, and part of my warm-up has a hang progression, a swing progression, and an overhead walk each day, even though that's not part of like whatever sessions there are, you can use it as a tool to progressively work people towards stuff. Sure. But that sounds like you're doing it on purpose, which I'm thumbs up. If you're just doing it willy-nilly, like I'm lazy and don't want to do different stuff all the time. I mean, at least you own it in that case. Like if you're saying I'm lazy and don't want to do that, that's you owning it. You're doing it on purpose, just make sure you're thinking about it and have a reason behind why you're doing it.
And I love what you said there about it having a purpose, right? And that goes with all sections of the training session, right? Like, why are you doing something? I don't care. Why are you doing a single warm-up drill or a single progression step if you don't have a purpose behind doing it, right? If it doesn't have a purpose throughout the whole entire 60 minutes, then you're wasting someone's time during that section if it's not purposeful.
Sure.
Regardless of how small that is.
Sure. Laziness is a reason. Yes. I agree. I mean, it is like you're out there slaying. As long as the rest of the class is bomb.com, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
that's a
love it.
Internet term for good.
Any other pitfalls you see, Pat? Based on
In a general warm up, I think one of the ones that I didn't mention, I might have mentioned it earlier, is like too aggressive too quickly. So it'll be something where it's like in the warm up, it's like, all right, guys, grab your jump rope. We're going to start into triple unders. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like that's just too much too quickly. Or even box jumps where it's like, all right, guys, start off with 10 box jumps and everyone's cold. It's like you'll see people do that in these general warm-ups where they jump into a movement that's too far.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen that more often than I would like to see. You just got to be like, what's the lowest, lightest, softest version of this? Let's start there. Even if by the end of the general warm-up I want to get to that full movement, how do I go like way back in the session? So I think, Joe, you asked the question, how do you gauge if something isn't too intense too quick? Be like, are there steps necessary in order for me to do the full movement? Is there pounding involved? Or are there like progressions that are behind this? So something like a box jump, you would have step ups. You know, like that would be a version of it. Like you could do a step up, or you could do a jump up, step down, or you could do a light bouncing on the heels. Like if there's a way that you can make it smaller and softer, then do the smaller, softer version first. If it's something like, say, I said triple unders, clearly there's something other than triple unders. We have double unders. We also have single unders, and we also have, just bouncing in place. So if it's progressive by nature and you can work it back to something simpler, then it's often something that you'd want to start with the simpler version. Similar to something even like a push-up. If you wouldn't necessarily want to jump people straight into push-ups, round one would be a knee push-up because you can work that back, or a wall push-up. So if you can like unpack it to something slightly easier, then just start with the slightly easier version. There's no reason to jump right in. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good rule of thumb generally.
Yeah, I can usually look at people's facial expressions to know if I've done too much too quick. If like, hey, we're gonna do some box jumps, and people start to be like looking at me sideways or a little bit nervous to do it, I'm like, it's probably not the best thing to be doing right now. Let's regress this just a little bit.
Let's go.
Yeah, screw it. Let's just try it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about specific warm-ups. Sound good?
No, I'm out. You only had 40 minutes of my time. Later, Eric O'Connor.
No. Oh man, I need to keep you for this. So we're talking about specific warm-up. We're talking about the portion of the class that takes place after the general warm-up. And now we're going to start targeting the specific movements in the workout. What is the overall goal from an athlete standpoint and a coach standpoint during this time?
Great question, Eric O'Connor. The goal is to make it so when you say 3, 2, 1, go, they know what they're doing and they are ready for it, both physiologically and psychologically, meaning they are both warm and primed and ready to go at the loads that are appropriate for the workout. And psychologically, they have the mechanics that are the best versions of those mechanics that they are able to do for the day. So when you think about a generalized warm-up, there should be, or not generalized, a skill-specific warm-up. There should be clear teaching progressions that allow you to mitigate fault and teach while simultaneously prepping their physiology for the actual session.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You kind of got it all there.
What do we got here? The hour. I'm only starting my exercise relationship with early morning. So yeah, life is too busy to do it any other time though. Yeah. 5 a.m. squat club. I mean, it's in your name. You know what I do love though is, do you see that picture he's got? That's a below parallel squat in that thing. The number of icons I see where they throw it up, and I'm like, what the? Like, come on, man. You're telling me you don't know. But 5 a.m. squat club, good icon there. Yeah. So in general, like, to that skill specific, we want to make sure that they've learned all the stuff and they've actually prepped their system.
Yeah. And then, for us, like, we're able to assess movement, assess scaling, make corrections, maybe give them a goal for the day with each movement, or have like a focus point for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say, depending on the complexity of the movement, there is more or less unpacking of the movement.
Yeah.
Usually the way I do it is I'll probably pick one and maybe a second movement to really go in depth on. And the other ones are just kind of like a brief overview of like, this is what we're doing today. If you don't know how to do it, here's what you're going to do,
Yeah. And that kind of ties into an earlier question we had previously. It was like, hey, like how much time do you spend on the general versus specific? But you can also break that down as like, how much time do you spend per movement? Right. And like more
Sure.
complex, more time, less complex. Maybe it's even in that movement is even in the general warm up itself.
Yep. I would say so. I think that's a good general rule of thumb. Eric, are you the one asking these questions as CrossFit training? Are you typing this question to us?
That is not me. That is not me. What do you think about gyms and coaches that let people warm up on their own?
Fired. No.
Maybe.
I think when it comes to a generalized warm up, there's an argument to be made for if you're bantering with people and doing stuff and moving all around and it's the same warm up every day and people just kind of come in and do that warm up and then move into the skill specific, then there is a potential argument to be made for that being a valid way to do things. The skill specific, having it people warm up skill specific on their own, I don't know why people would pay to come to your gym, in my opinion. And that might be harsh, but like that is where the majority of the interaction happens, that goes to the majority of the quote unquote coaching. Like you coach during a workout, but you're only referencing things you have already taught and like smashed into them during the skill specific. So I would say that if gyms and coaches are letting people do skill specific warm-ups on their own, and again, this doesn't mean like, hey, we learned a bunch of stuff, now build to your heavy while I walk around and help. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, just like, here's the movements, guys, figure it out. Like, I don't know why. I personally, this might be harsh. I don't know why people pay to come to your gym. It's like you're a gym rental at that point, like a gear rental space at that point in time.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I don't mind giving like 3 to 5 minutes on the front end of class for people to kind of like, hey, they want to grab a roller and roll something out. They want to do a set, a stretch or something like that. Or I'm fine with that if you have that in your class plan, like a little 3 to 5 minute window there. But make sure it doesn't take away from the overall quality of your class. Mm-hmm. We got another comment here. I'm going to show this one. I prefer a coach-led warm-up. Oh, where we at? Using them for regressions and early nudges at scaling options. Take every opportunity to coach. One, I love the name here too. Struggle Works Garage, 5 a.m. Squat Club. We got some great names here.
Absolutely.
Throwing down.
Joe Klassen, great name too.
Yeah, Struggle Works. I agree with you. I think a keynote here, take every opportunity to coach. Yep. Every opportunity to coach, interact with your athletes. And the warm-ups were great times for that too.
I would just stress, though, that coaching is not necessarily telling them about movements. It's making them move differently. I think there's a clear distinction here. There's people who love to hear themselves speak, and they love to hear themselves speak about the movements. The more important thing is that they're moving and that you're watching that movement and modifying that movement. There's a time and place to teach. There's a time and place to do these education, but the vast majority of it should be them moving. And I think that the pitfall we fall into sometimes when we're very coach driven is a lot of teaching instead of a lot of coaching. So I think there is a balance to be set in something like a skill specific warm up. And this is often the type of feedback that we'll get from gyms that shift from, not coaching, and they'll go then to a level 2 and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to go coach. and they go back to their gym and coach, and members are like, it's boring. And it's like, well, it's not boring. The coach is just learning to deliver it efficiently. And that means your progressions are going to be chunky and your 2-1-2 drills are going to be chunky. So you're going to do that seeing, correcting, and that balance is going to be hard. And it's like, there is a little bit of time to develop a general flow. But that's where you see really great coaches excel, is they'll be able to manage and navigate movement and education in a way that feels seamless, to where at the end of the workout, people learned a bunch and they pretty much didn't stop moving the entire class.
Yeah. Let's show this one, because I've been guilty of this in the past. It's easy to get caught up showing how much we know. I thought I had to flex my brain a long, long time ago. I think when I first started coaching, I thought I had to like prove myself and how much I knew to people or whatever. And I would kind of take away some of my educational background and start giving that information on a too frequent basis. It might be a time and a place for that, but really because I wasn't I just wasn't actually confident in my ability as a coach. Once I learned how to make things simple and the logic behind that, I was blown away by how much I improved with my teaching,
Yeah.
seeing, and correcting, honestly.
Yeah, it's actually one of the reasons that I really love coaches when they first start and they don't have much education. They've got like 5 cues and they can see like weight in the heels, knees out, and lumbar curves. And like that's all they're looking for. And then they're just going around being like, go deeper, knees out, chest up. And like that's like 80% of coaching, you know?
Yeah.
Like and all of a sudden they learn some stuff and they're like, oh, I want to teach everyone all my stuff. And they don't realize they've lost some of the efficacy of just the basics. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we all go through this transformation of looking back at our old coaching and be like, ooh, I don't know as much as I thought I knew. So I'm just going to go ahead and only give them what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize how effective that truly is, especially once you start developing coaches, like you start developing new coaches, you watch coaches who are in that interim stage of like, they've learned cool stuff and they really want to share it, but they don't realize that what they really need to do is go back to their first self and go, just make it really simple. And then if
Yeah.
someone says, why are we doing this? You go, here's why, versus I'm going to tell you all why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like it's a subtle difference, but it definitely changes the overall flow and dynamic of any given class.
Yeah. Let's talk about gymnastic movements really
Nope.
quick. 'Cause they're hard to
Okay.
teach, right? They can be pretty complicated to teach. So we get some questions a lot about like, hey, what do you do during a gymnastic movement? Let's say it's like a pull up, a toe to bar, maybe even like a muscle up, when not everyone can do all the progressions. So you're progressing to muscle up as part of that progression, and not everyone can do it. Like, what are those athletes doing? How do you manage that?
Yeah. And I think this is where good session plans come into play. Basically, pre prepping for any given scenario you might find yourself in. So, having good flushed out progressions that essentially have what we've referred to on this channel and through HQ a lot that have bus stops, essentially where people can get off and continue to work the hardest version of something that hardest for them, so to speak. So, if we take something like let's take a kipping pull-up and we have these variations of a kipping pull-up. We would want to basically ahead of time make sure going into any class, we've got rings set up or low pull-up bars set up somewhere, or boxes under pull-up bars for jumping pull-ups. So those need to be set up ahead of time. Now, when we go to learn these movements, where we can have a progression that involves a hanging on the bar, a swinging on the bar, swinging on the bar, and attempting a kip, and then everyone try a strict pull-up. And if you don't have a strict pull-up, then you say, okay, you're staying right there in the progression, or I want you to go over to one of these low bars, or I want you to hop to a set of rings, and we're going to practice some ring rows. And you basically progress the next people on to places that are slightly more difficult, while always giving the caveat of wherever you stopped along this path, I want you to go back and try 5 more of those. And it's just more work at the hardest version of whatever these are. And being
Yeah.
intelligent with that and being able to navigate and manage flow that's the art of coaching, is figuring out how to go back and forth between those.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think another approach too is like for your progression, when you know that those can be an issue, write down 1 to 2 scaling options for each step of the progression. Um, I think regardless, the worst thing is when people are just standing around watching other people move and they're not moving themselves. Right. I
Yeah.
know I would not appreciate that if I was in their footsteps, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens all the time,
Hmm.
unfortunately. I think it's one of the things I see a lot in gyms is struggling with that, and it makes sense. There's a quote from, gosh, what was it? It was I forget who he was talking to, but he was talking about how imagine if you only had 100, like a body weight barbell, like you've got a body weight barbell and you got to learn to snatch. Like, what are you gonna do?
Right.
Like that that like how your rate of improvement is going to be really slow. That's essentially gymnastics.
Yeah.
Like gymnastics is you have one body weight, right? Like you can't do a like partial body weight. So there's a big struggle in navigating this space of gymnastics, and that comes with creativity. So we have to start to look at is range of motions. We have to look at scales. We have to look at modifying the movement in a more aggressive way to achieve a similar stimulus. So I understand the difficulty, but the options are all out there. And it's really cool to see how many cool things have come out from different gymnastics courses that exist and the stuff that we put out on CrossFit Training. And like over the years, we've almost figured out every way you can kind of navigate this. It just takes
Yeah.
practice.
I love your thoughts on like having the stuff organized too ahead of time. Like be prepared, for that
Yeah.
stuff to pop up, what issues that might pop up or regressions that may need to happen. Um, I think also like, if you're teaching something and maybe it's really hard to teach and you haven't taught it a lot, make sure you practice the stuff on your own a little bit or schedule like some one-on-one sessions with people and run them through the progressions prior to
Yeah.
teaching a group of like
Huge.
15 or 20 people or so. Like just get a bit more
Huge.
familiarity with teaching the muscle up if you haven't taught it or if you haven't taught the handstand walking in a while and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. That practice is huge.
Yeah.
You just made me think of a couple things you can do to help mitigate some of those larger groups. One of the things is if, say, you've got 20 people and you're doing a pull-up progression, you should have half the group maybe holding the bottom of a squat while the other half of the group practices the progression, and then you flip-flop between pieces of it.
That's cool.
There is an opportunity where you have the other people just watching, but that's a lot of people standing around watching, especially if you're not particularly good at the flow just yet. So having other things that people can do, like hold a plank or hold the bottom of a squat or go get some gear or whatever it is, and being really intentional with those transitions, that requires practice ahead of time. And then that's a great way to mitigate a larger group and a complex gymnastics progression.
That's
Another
awesome.
really easy individual tip is instead of being like, all right, guys, hop up and give me 5 reps. What you say is you say, hop up and give me about 30 seconds worth of swings. And you give time frames to where you can just walk around and adjust people, or
Mhm.
hop up and start swinging, guys. I want to see some swings in there. Or give numbers that are ridiculous. Give me about 100 swings on the bar, guys, maybe 200 swings. And then not everyone's like falling off and looking at you because you got stuck on one person coaching. They're just continuing to move. And then you really control the start-stop version of it. Because I see
Yeah.
a lot of coaches who are like, everybody give me 3 reps. And they see one person and then they have to coach that one person. And then everyone's dropped off the bar and they're over here just staring at you coach
Yeah.
this one person.
Well, I'll use that approach for the general warm up too, like in
Yeah.
that, I mean, the 5 a.m. squat club, all those guys at 5 o'clock, they're not ready to count reps yet. So I usually just give
No.
just designated time frames, regardless of
Yeah.
the time of the day. Like we're going to work for a certain period of time. We're going to flow together throughout versus people finishing at different times with the sets and reps that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I like Lance's comment here. The coaching and owner at our gym is phenomenal. That's awesome.
Same.
Love it. Love it.
Love it too.
Let's talk build up time. So we talked about specific warm-ups. I think we tackled more about like unloaded, light loaded type of stuff. But I think, we're entering into the workout. We want to make sure we have adequate time to assess people under load. And I had that as a
Yeah.
pitfall that I've seen. It's like
Yeah.
we rush people into the workout weight too quickly sometimes. It's like, hey, you were doing 135 snatches today. You guys got 3 minutes and 28 seconds to get the weight in the bar. That sort of a thing. Probably not going to be the best approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where we just have to sometimes make this mistake and then go, like, what have I done? Like we do this all the time where we accidentally get to a place where we're like, oh no, my timeline is off. I would highly recommend planning ahead of time, having a timeline that you're trying to hit. And then when you notice that the timeline's off, then you just adjust for the next class.
Yeah.
And then the next time you find yourself in this, like always a lot for more time to build than you think.
Yeah, I agree.
I've always been fascinated by these people who are like, yeah, take 10 minutes to find a 1 rep max. And I'm like, pardon? Like, do you understand like what you're asking of the human physiology there? It's like, that's a unique test in and of itself. Take 10 minutes to find a 1 rep max, but that's not finding 1 rep max. Like
Right.
take an hour and a half to find a 1 rep max. That makes more sense. Like there needs to be adequate time of building and getting your vision with them under tension. And so those are often times where you do all this coaching, you go through a progression, you don't beat it to death with a PVC pipe per se. Maybe you move them onto a light load relatively early, like a barbell, like an open bar. And then you're like, okay, we're going to take about the next 10 minutes to build up, doing one set every minute and a half. and I want to see you slowly add load. And then you're walking around and adjusting as a coach. But really giving people time to do that, and you'll screw it up. I guarantee it. But
absolutely. Still,
absolutely.
Still.
I did it just the other day.
You did,
but it works, you know?
Yeah, it was fine. And it's okay. You know, people have a little bit of that urge to, you know, build a little bit heavier than the workout weight. Well, if you have a longer build up time, they can build up a little bit heavier than the workout weight. That's totally fine. But I think it's critical for us as coaches to be able to assess people for, well, is the loading they're going to use going to meet, exceed, or be below like their threshold? And that's a component there to be assessing too. Is it going to help them get the stimulus of the day? And if we rush that, we could derail that whole process.
For sure. Yeah. But what you actually will find is people on both ends of that spectrum, people who do not rush that. And so they're not warm come workout time. You even give them 10 minutes and they don't warm up and they're just lollygagging around. Or you give people who will do like one set and then just stare at you. And they're like, I'm ready. I'm at my working weight. And you're like, whoa, no. Like you need to go heavier or show me some of those or work it back and try a couple. And like, you have to be really intentional with how you're dictating these building sessions because people will need pushes to go heavier. People will need pulls to go lighter. People need pushes to go faster and people will need pulls to go slower. You know, like that's the balance that you're navigating in that session as a coach.
And that's one of the things I have as a pitfall here is like giving the athlete full free reign to build up however they want and to pick the loading that they want. And I think it's great to involve them in that process. But you as the coach are the one really guiding that and being deliberate about what's going to be best for them today.
Correct. Always.
Do you like doing practice rounds prior to a workout? So if Fran's popping up, like doing a practice round of things like, hey, let's do thrusters and pull-ups, like a 1 round 5 and 5 or 2 rounds 5 and 5 prior to starting?
Educationally, I like practice rounds. Realistically, and emotionally, I hate doing practice rounds personally. Like as a guy who's done CrossFit for 20 years, like I know what it's gonna feel like. So even if a coach has me, hey, do 10 and 10 reps for 2 rounds, I'm gonna probably do 4. You know, like and put it down and walk over the thing and do it. But that's where I'm at in my career, right? I know my body pretty well. I wouldn't, and not to be arrogant, I just wouldn't need the same kind of thing that other people would. I think mechanistically, it makes a lot of sense. Like when you talk about coaches and classes, you should be programming these for your people and building it into your culture. I didn't quite do that with my own mentality. So I have this weird antagonism around it in my head, but I see its value. I also am the type of coach who will punt the timeline on occasion and find myself not having time for that little warm up round. So my warm up 2 rounder might be, all right, guys, we're going to do 5 thrusters real quick. Walk over the bar. Give me 1 pull up. That looks good. You're looking good. You're feeling good, you know?
Then they're ready to rock. I think it's one approach to use. I don't think it's an absolute, hey, you have to do it. I think in a group class, one of the advantages there, you can start to see how the transitions might be. So how does it look when people are going from the barbell to the pull-up bar? Like, is it safe? Is there an efficient traveling path there where people are going to be both safe and efficient with it? And that's one other thing I like about like maybe doing a build-up or a practice round prior.
I'm a big fan of practice mechanics. So like, okay, we're going to go around and say it's like a fight gone bad and there's a whole bunch of movements. So being like, all right, everybody get to your station, the first station you're starting at. When I say go, give me 1 rep. Cool, 1 rep. Now rotate to the next station. Now rotate to the next station. Now rotate. So basically they know the flow of the class. And to me, that's more of the mechanics of the session. Just like you were saying, how are they getting to the barbell? What pull-up bar are they using? Things like that. Rather than the necessary pre-prep of like the energy system getting primed, which is also an argument I think you could use.
Yep. Well, cool, man. We've been here for about an hour or so. Is there anything else about warm-ups you want to get across to people here?
You're going to make mistakes and it's all good. And you just learn from that mistake and you try something different in the future. and you develop your own style and just take care of the people who are in front of you.
Agreed. And that doesn't apply just to warm-ups. It applies to just everything in coaching, right?
Yeah, life advice.
Yeah, for sure. Life advice from the Pat Barber. Well, man, thanks for joining me for this one. I think it was a great discussion. Thanks for everyone for tuning in as well. And then if you have any people you want to see, topics that you want to tackle, you want us to tackle in the future, feel free to email educontent@crossfit.com and we'll take those suggestions. But until next time, thank you, team.